But we've got a very special guest with us today, our final guest of the show, who has just joined us. And he is going to talk about his adventures across the globe to raise awareness of dementia.
Yes, Louis Alexander's last feat saw him run a marathon in the remotest area of each of the 7 continents, raising more than £40,000 for charity.
But just last week, Louis announced his brand new challenge, which will see him attempt to become the youngest person ever to swim the 7 classical seas.
Very quick question before we get started. Do you know what the 7 classical seas are?
No.
OK, right, let's find out. Louis is here now in the studio. Louis, what are the 7 classical seas? Good to see you, by the way.
Likewise, great to be back. Thank you for the opportunity. So the classical 7 seas are the Red, Arabian, the Aegean, the Adriatic, the Black, Mediterranean and the North Seas. So they're not the oceans, they're the classical 7 seas.
And you're going to be swimming a marathon, which is how far in swimming?
So a marathon in the swimming world is 10 kilometres.
Right.
So last year I ran a marathon through all 7 continents, you said, and now it's time to come back to the number 7. I can't seem to get away from it, and it's time to go for the 7.
And are you a strong swimmer?
Well, I've done 2 small swims in the past. I did the Alcatraz last year, and I was the only person on the day to finish without a wetsuit. And then 2 years ago...
Why weren't you wearing a wetsuit?
Well, I needed the extra challenge, so I just wanted to try and do it. So I had to put a little bit of weight on, and I did a lot of cold exposure and training, and somehow managed to get across. And then the year before that, I swam from Europe to Asia across one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, out in Turkey. So I've done 2 small swims.
That sounds...
A little bit, but those were nothing compared to what's coming up this summer.
You wouldn't do the English Channel?
Maybe one day. Maybe.
I don't know if it's clean enough.
I wouldn't if Southern Water keep pumping out sewage into the ocean.
Well, that's amazing. Now, why do you care so much about dementia?
Well, dementia is something I've been fighting for several years now, and it goes back to when I was 19. I'm 24 now, but when I was 19, my grandfather, he passed away from what I like to think is one of the most cruel and devastating illnesses out there. My granddad, he was an incredible man. His name was...
Is that him there?
That's
so what's
him.
His name?
Captain Rick Taylor.
Captain Rick Taylor.
Was he a bit of an adventurer?
He was. He was an adventurer, he's an explorer. He served in the British Army for 38 years, and he served all around the world, but it was sadly that battle against dementia which ended his life. And when I was 19, I had probably the greatest privilege, where my nan pulled me aside and she asked me, would you like to deliver the eulogy at his funeral? And the truth is, at 19 years old, at my granddad's funeral, I didn't know what to say. So I just stood up there and I made a promise, and that was a promise to support this fight until the day we find a cure. And that number, I think, is 40 or 50,000 now.
You're going to make me cry. You're making me emotional. That's such a lovely thing to do.
Well, it's about looking after those generations who are still affected. There's so many. There's about thinking about the generations below us who this is the illness.
How old are you, Louis?
24 now.
Very mature for a 24-year-old, a wise head on young shoulders.
I'll try my best.
How old was your grandfather when he started getting symptoms of dementia, and how long was it until he passed away?
So he was diagnosed at just 58 years old.
Wow.
Which is incredibly young. And his battle was extremely long too. It was 17 years long. And that number is incredibly sad. And actually 2 years ago, I ran 17 marathons in 17 consecutive days to honour those 17 years he lived with the illness, because everyone's journey with dementia
marathons. That is a commitment.
Well, a little bit, but nothing compared to what's coming up this summer.
No, well, that's for sure. But in terms of the dementia awareness, now we are hearing quite a lot at the moment about how there's lots of research going into it, and actually that there may be some progress to actually find a cure. There
is. Well, we hope so. There's been so many small breakthroughs happening recently, which is amazing. And we just keep sort of hitting this drum and we keep fighting, because I'm very lucky to come on today and talk about this. But the truth is, this is a fight with so many people, the carers, the researchers, those working at the charity, those actually affected. This is a whole team fight, and we're all in it together.
And it's such a devastating disease to witness in real time. My wife's grandfather had dementia and he eventually died with it. And I remember I was telling you in the green room, I'd sit next to him and he'd act as if, I mean, bless him, he never knew. He was meeting me for the first time. He'd say, he was Scottish, "What did your dad do?" And I'd say, and then 5 seconds later, he'd say the same thing again. But his wife, Irene, used to get, quite frustrated with it, and it affects so many people. And it's so sad to see someone you love losing the essence of them just gradually over the years.
Well, they almost become a shell, right, don't they, as you probably saw, right in front of you, and it's incredibly devastating. And often that responsibility is put on the carers. And since I started this journey 5 years ago, I've received so many messages, people sharing their personal stories where they've had to leave university to become a carer for their parent or grandparent. They've had to leave their job to become a carer, and that's a professional job, and that responsibility shouldn't be put on people.
And so tell us, just to finish, how are you training for this huge and challenging adventure.
Well, I got back from Antarctica with the running project end of December, and I went back into training early January for this project. So I'm in the ocean training, I'm training in the pool, I'm training the body lab, doing all my strength conditioning with my coach, Jake. It's a full-time commitment to make this happen. And
Good lad.
And the goal is, of course, that the running project took 14 months, whereas this is going to be done in just 2. So
And where can people donate to your cause?
So justgiving.com. If you go onto my Instagram, Louis Alexander Explorer, the link's on there, and that's where people can follow along, because it's going to be all done in just 6 or 7 weeks. So it's going to be done back to back, short recovery times, obviously dealing with the heat and humidity.
You must be extremely fit, Louis. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Louis
Louis.
Alexander there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and joining us at home on Saturday Morning Live.